You lead your team. Let's talk about it. The Lead Your Firm podcast. Lessons in leadership from advisors who live it every day. Hosted by Darren Blonsky, Managing Principal at Firmata Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Contents are for educational purposes only. Nothing herein amounts to investment advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. The Lead Your Firm podcast starts now.
Welcome back. This is the Lead Your Firm podcast. We're really excited today. We've got Tony Parr, who runs an excellent firm out in beautiful Minneapolis. We were just out there hanging out with him. And I guess this time of year, it's not so beautiful, but it was sure beautiful when I was there and changing quickly. But anyway, we're really excited to have you today, Tony, and to talk a little bit more about what you've done in your leadership and the success that you've experienced along the way. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Darren. With that introduction, it feels like you're talking about somebody else. And yes, it has changed a lot. You were here, I think, late summer, early fall. We got our first 2-inch snowfall last night. So,
oh, wow.
And it's only just beginning. Game of Thrones, winter is coming. So you're welcome back for a little cross-country skiing.
I think it was last year you showed me it was like there was your deck and then there was snow.
Yeah, we had a big snow year last year, but we like that. If it's just below zero and it's brown grass, it ain't no fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. Well, it makes you appreciate the spring and the summer indeed. My time on the East Coast, that's certainly what it taught me.
That's what we're supposed to say. We appreciate the change of the seasons, but when it's 20 below in January, that's no secret. It sucks. So I'll be coming to see you in Sonoma, Darren.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I have spent a lot of time in California, and I live a little bit in the foothills now where we have some seasons, and it is nice to have some seasons. Yeah. I must admit that, but we don't get quite the snow you get. Nor is it ever really 20 below. I knew it was bad when I'm in Minneapolis. I'm figuring out like all of the buildings have these walkways across all of the buildings. So you can literally go downtown and not have to go outside.
Yeah, there's ways to beat it, right? I always say
right.
There's no bad weather. There's only bad clothing. And I go from heated garage in the suburbs to heated garage downtown. And yes, you're right. Our buildings downtown are connected. Darren, I don't know if you had hamsters as a kid, but I had the habit trail where all the different cages were connected by tubes. So I call the Skyway system the human habit trail.
That's exactly what it is. I was pretty impressed by it, like, oh, okay, now I get the negative 20 degrees and how people function in this. It's kind of like in Texas when you go from AC to AC to AC because you're just in the summer, you're not going outside.
Yeah, it's all about adapt and overcome.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so Tony, tell us about Parr McKnight. How big are you? Where are you at? What's your story?
Yeah, well, I'll go back a little bit because the evolution is kind of interesting. I had a third shift, a graveyard shift job in high school and college. I packed grocery store pallets starting at 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. I did that for 3-4 summers in a row, and it really wasn't much of an existence. I would work all night and sleep all day. And back then, my mom received a tough diagnosis. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I thought, working all night, sleeping all day, I need to spend some time with my mom. So I went walking down Main Street in a little town called Wayzata, a very luxurious suburb of Minneapolis on the shores of Lake Minnetonka. And I applied to all the different brokerage firms there. And I basically said I would do anything that anybody didn't want to do. So I ended up getting hired at a regional firm called Piper, Jaffray, and Hopwood. And I was a wire operator. I was a cashier. I was the copy guy. I would go get lunch for the advisors. And basically got to start there. I got to know the branch manager who was perennially the top producer at Piper. And this is, Darren, you remember back when this was a very transactional business. Mm-hmm. So I got to go on a couple of appointments with him. The guy would take down 100,000 muni bonds. And while he was driving to an appointment as Jaguar, he would put out $100,000 worth of bonds. And they drove nice cars. They wore nice clothes. They got to spend time on the phone every day. It was warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and no heavy lifting. And I said, boy, I think I could do this for a living. So I made my contacts there, went to Boston University for 4 years, came back, went back to that same branch manager and said, I need a real job. And then I found out that I wasn't really good at being a stockbroker. I mean, it was tough, Darren, starting at zero every single month and getting on the phone, doing exactly what your mother told you not to do. Don't talk to strangers. Now I had to make a living talking to strangers. But I had the support of the branch manager. He had a very nebulous team where back then we used to have posting sheets and you would post all your trades on there. It was the bookkeeping system. And if he had a client that he had 3 bad trades in a row for, and he felt like he was threatened with termination, he would come out and talk to me or another one of his quote unquote team members and say, hey, Dr. Jones is a really good guy. As you can see, the last 3 trades haven't blossomed yet. If you can resuscitate the relationship, I'll split the business with you. So that was my first experience with teams where there was no common culture, no common processes, no common philosophy, no common vision, no common nothing. It was just a way of sharing some business. So fast forward a couple years, another one of the branch managers, nebulous teammates and we formed a better team, I would say, but I was the young guy. He had 10 years on me. And he had his own book by then, and I had my emerging book with nothing in it. And anything that I could scrounge up, we split 50-50. But the problem with that, Darren, was he was spending 95% of his time on his own book, earning $1 on the dollar, and I was spending 100% of my time on joint business. So I felt like a big leverage for his time. So we went our separate ways, and I was on my own, sink or swim on my own. And I started getting some traction. I started having some success, but my quality of life was going in the tank. So that's when I started employing interns. And that was big for my business because I was able to leverage my time with the interns. And I skipped a part of the story, which was this previous partner and I left our regional firm and went to Prudential Securities. And we started building an advisory practice. So back in 1993, I started building a fee-based business. Went my separate ways with this other advisor, started using interns, and then fast forward to today, there's 13 people on the team. The 3 other business owners are former interns of mine. So it's been really nice to develop a culture with these guys that kind of grew up in my system, and now it's become our system. So we're 13 people. We have a full-time calendar manager that also acts as a CSA. We've got about 5 CSAs, 2 paraplanners, and 4 certified financial planners. Again, based in Minneapolis, we've got about $850 million under management. This year, we'll do about $6.5 million in production. And over time, I've slowly let pieces of my ownership go to other people on the team to empower them, with equity and an equity-like mentality. So that's a little background on how we got where we are. And life is good. Life is changing for me a little bit. I'm 57 years old. I don't have the same energy that I did before, and have some different goals for the business and for the team and for growth. So I hope we can touch on some of that, but hopefully that gives you some of the background from stockbroker to improbable team leader of 13 people.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you've had a great run so far. So tell us about what's transitioning for you, what's moving on, what's shifting. That's pretty impressive to bring in 3 other owners, raise them in the business, train them in the business, create the culture for the business, and then transition ownership to them. I think that's the golden opportunity that a lot of people have to transition their businesses.
Yeah. Well, Darren, what's changing, I think, is my skill set. And I'm really wanting to focus on the things that I'm good at. I used to try and do it all because my motto was, I can do it best. And a book I read recently called Who Not How by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. It's just a fancy book on delegation and letting things go so you can focus on the highest and best use of your time. I'm good at talking about concepts. I'm good about talking about the markets, the economy, interest rates, inflation, the interplay within all those things. I'm good about talking about our team, our process, the people on the team, our philosophy. We recently were empowered with e-money. And it's a big step up from the planning software we had before. And that's kind of the meteor that killed this dinosaur. I can go through a balance sheet. I can talk about estate planning concepts. I can talk about cash flows, but I'm not going to assemble plans anymore. I don't write recommendations. I don't put notes in the system. We have other people on the team to do that. And, growth is an imperative. If you're not growing, you're dying. So I want to focus my efforts more on business development. I want to take care of our people. I want to guard our culture. I want to be a mentor to our young people. So the nitty gritty of financial planning is something that I'm not enjoying as much as I used to. And fortunately, we've got 3 other CFPs on the team that are really, really good at that. So we've been able to kind of split those responsibilities, and I can focus on the highest and best use of my time. The other thing, Darren, that's changing is I used to be an energy-filled lunatic when I was in my 20s and 30s. I would get up at 3:30 in the morning and get more work done before 7 a.m. than many other advisors got done the entire day. And then I'd leave the office at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go coach my kids' football, then come back, grab a bite to eat, and work until 9 o'clock. And I literally burned the candle at both ends, so much so that, after 35 years of that, I started feeling burnt out and I wanted more balance in my life. I'm on my second marriage now. I'm on the right marriage now. And I really think that, my quest for growth and success and all that cost me a lot personally over those years. And I'm not going to make that mistake again. I want to take care of me. I want to take care of my wife. I want to take care of my kids. I want to take care of my fitness. I want to feed my brain positive things. And that doesn't mean chopping wood 6 days a week for 12 hours a day. So I'm looking for more balance in my life. One of the major, symbols of that in the last 3 years, I've taken a full 4 or 5 weeks off straight from the business by doing a sabbatical. This year was my 3rd sabbatical. And I don't mean light duty from home. I mean completely disconnect from the grid. I didn't even look at email for 5 weeks. And the only way I was able to do that is by having 13 other quality individuals that step into the void and assume the leadership of the team, assume the day-to-day operations, even take control of my email and answer my emails on my behalf. So that's a little bit of what's changing. I'm less crazy driven right now, although I do want success. I want it for different reasons. And I'm looking for a little bit more of a lifestyle practice that's immersed within a growth practice. Because I do think you have to grow. I think you have to grow so you can acquire the best technology to serve your clients in an awesome way. And I think you have to grow to make money so you can pay your people well and have an outstanding benefits package, because all that I have comes from our clients and the people that have served them through me and with me. So that's what's changing, Darren.
That's a great answer. So I'm going to pull a couple questions out of there. So no doubt while you were building your business, many people along the way said to you, Tony, you got to slow down and create balance.
Yeah.
What changed for you this time? Because I'm sure you heard it before, but you didn't actually probably do it sounds like, but now you're doing it.
Yeah.
What changed? Why did you listen now?
Well, I think I just started listening because it was the right thing to do at the right time. And I really had more time for reflection. And I really looked at what it costs to get here. And I think what changed also is, these interns. Brian was an intern 25 years ago. John was an intern 16 years ago. Nelson was an intern 8 years ago. I think they finally got to the stage in their development where they could step up and be leaders and situational leaders as I stepped aside. So it's always been my goal, Darren, to build a business where my attendance is optional and still serves clients in an outstanding way. And my goal was also to build a business where I could obsolete myself. And it finally started to feel that way. So it would be shame on me if I didn't start to take advantage of that, because it's been 35 years of really, really hard work. And I don't mean I know there were guys working in that warehouse on the graveyard shift that had been doing that for 35 years. So I'm not saying it's that kind of hard work, but you know what it's like worrying about running a business, worried about clients and their wealth and their families, and being concerned about the markets and interest rates and inflation, and then trying to balance things out with your family. It's it's
a
tough
grind
to do that for 35 years. And for me, it just finally became time to tap on the brake a little bit. And it's an experiment right now. I mean, I think my DNA is to stay involved and to keep driving. So I'm just seeing how it goes. It's a new thing for me. But I started listening and I started feeling really tired. And I think COVID did that to all of us. So that was really a big catalyst for me also.
So now you took this 4 to 5 weeks off where you were truly just disconnected from the office.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about how you did that. How did you set your team up to be successful and lead in your absence?
Yeah, I think, you develop your punch list before you go. And you know what they say about, what's the busiest day of the year? It's the day before you go on vacation, when you're gathering all your open loops and, dotting your I's and checking your crossing your T's to get out of town. It's just that basically on steroids, where you really have to keep the pedal to the metal for 60 days before you're out. And then you just empower everybody else with what you didn't get to. And then you cut the cord and you leave. So I'm not sure I can describe it much better than that, but there's a definite ramp up period where you're really kind of going nuts. So
what are you doing in that period where you're going nuts?
Well, it's just a lot of client meetings. It's polishing off your projects. It's clearing off your task list. It's clearing out your inbox. It's getting rid of all your paper. It's all the stuff we do on a daily basis, but you just have to amp it up in anticipation of being out. And Darren, the other thing that I would point to is, we have 13 people. We got 4 advisors. We are not a siloed team. So we're an ensemble team where it's all for one and one for all. We keep really good notes on all of our clients. So there's a lot of redundancy built into the practice, where if I'm not out for 5 weeks, if I get hit by a bus, somebody else picks up on the key client relationships and can move the ball forward because of that ensemble approach, because of the continuity and backup system that we have on the team. So, it's not like things shut down while I'm out. They continued. But what I hear is they continued at 55 miles an hour, not at 75 miles an hour, the pace at which we tend to when I'm around here.
So leads to the next question. I grew up with a dad who was a firefighter. Anyone who grows up in the fire service knows that dad's gone or mom's gone, whoever it is, they come back and, the other partner figured out how to organize and orchestrate. And then all of a sudden you got this new person coming back in, and there's all this. I always observed with my parents, was this re-entry period.
Yeah.
It was rather challenging. Tell us about your re-entry and how you did that. And because you just alluded to the fact that we're doing 55, now we're doing 75, that had to have an impact on people.
Well, I think being gone for 5 weeks tends to reset the speed limit a little bit. And every time I leave and come back, I tend to lower my average speed. And, with seeing clients sell businesses and stay on as advisors, or clients that are getting older and are kind of working part-time, I'm fully aware of something called seagull management. I don't know if you've heard of seagull management, Darren. It's kind of when you're gone most of the time, and then you come back every once in a while and flap your wings a lot, squawk, crap all over the place, and kick up dust and then leave again. I'm aware of what that is, and I don't want to be that guy. So I'm just going to point to the other people on my team and the fact that they kept the engine running. They kept it well oiled. And actually, this time I came back and I was real nervous. I kind of felt like it was my first day at school. And I said, all right, hit me. What do you got for me? And they're like, I don't know. Look at your calendar. Do you got any appointments this week? I said, yeah, I got a few. And they're like, well, that's it. So it was just a beautiful thing. It was just a beautiful thing.
So did you get any calls during that 4 to 5 weeks?
None.
Zero.
Yep.
That well done, man. That's a big achievement there.
Well, it's well done to the rest of the team. I can't take credit for that because
Well, that's what I mean. But you've enabled them and given them the ability to make decisions and to run and lead. And I think one of the biggest compliments any leader can get is that in the absence of their presence, the team still continues on. Does a great
correct.
job.
Yep. So
You know,
maybe I'll take 2 months in 2024.
you should take a summer months and a winter months, get them both.
Let's really test this thing.
Yeah, that's right. What books you reading now right now? You said Who Not How. What else you reading?
Oh, I'm reading a book on marriage by Tim Keller, and I'm actually taking a little break on the books because I've really zeroed in on a couple podcasts that I'm enjoying quite a bit. The Knowledge Project is one of them, and then Darren, you know this. I'm an unabashed Christian, and I do listen to a lot of Christian stuff. I love Rick Warren. I think he's a modern day saint, and that's just really resets me. Another change that I've made recently is the world is feeling really, really heavy. And I'm a big consumer of news. And I started not to feel any smarter. It just started getting me down. So I'm amping up the podcasts. I have 4 dogs under my roof at home. Wow. One of them is a 65-pound hyperactive Bernedoodle. So a trip to the dog park every day is a ritual for me. So I'll just pop in my earbuds and listen to a podcast and try and get a little smarter every single day. So it's really that Knowledge Project podcast that I'm doing. But I'm reading a great book on marriage by Tim Keller. A couple books that I've read recently, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. It's all about getting satisfaction and forward momentum from looking at how far you've come and not stressing yourself out that I'm not, 25-person RIA with $3 billion under management. There's a lot more motivation in looking back at how far you've come than putting all this pressure on yourself for growth, and this kind of societal pressure and mandate to get bigger and better and faster and stronger. That's going to happen. And sometimes it happens if you don't focus on it. So the book on marriage and podcast, that's what I'm focused on right now. But I got a shelf load of books that I stare at every day, and I'll just pull another one off as soon as I'm done with Tim Keller. But Darren, for your audience, one of the things that's made a big difference for me, and I'm a pretty big reader. I use Audible to download books, and then I will order the hardcover copy of the book, and I'll sit in my chair, put my earbuds in, and have Audible read my book to me while I look at it. And I can highlight and underline, and it really becomes more of a multi-sensory experience, which helps with retention. I'm looking at the words on the page, visual. I'm listening to Audible read the book to me, and I'm interacting with my book with a pen or a highlighter, which creates a tactile experience also. And then when I'm done with the book, to help with retention, I'll go leaf through the book and look at my highlights, and I will dictate the summary into my notes program on my phone. So now I've got my own little cliff notes of the books that I've read, and I can refer back, and I can continuously learn from what I've read, not finish a 250-page book trying to remember what I've read and maybe implement one thing. So
that's a great idea. What kind of notes program are you using?
I have a program. One of my favorite books of all time is this one right here, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. And I use a program that is the embodiment of that book. It's called Things. And it basically helps you identify the major areas of focus in your life, whether it's your business, your fitness and health, your family, your wisdom seeking, and then you can create areas of focus. You can put projects underneath those areas of focus, and underneath those projects are your next actions and your tasks. So my area of focus might be wisdom. My project might be read books. My tasks might be the books that I read. And in each one of those tasks, indicated by the title of the book, I can type in my summary. And it's also got a great search function. So whether it's, I need to stop at Trader Joe's and pick up milk on the way home, or I need to rake the yard over the weekend, one of the key tenets in this book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, is the brain is a great processor, but it's a very poor storage device. And the more things that we try and keep in our brain, the more stressed and unproductive we are. So if you can offload everything into a collection device, and that's David Allen language, if you can offload all those things into a collection device, you get more things done and you're less stressed out about it, and you can kick those things up. So where do I keep my notes? I keep them in my things program. I am a things black belt. And I would say if I've had any success in my life, it's because I have two brains. I have the one that sits on my shoulders and my things program in my phone. It's my external collection device. It acts as a task manager. And if I'm driving home and I think of something I need to do, all I have to do is, hey, Siri, in things, remind me to rake the yard this weekend. And it'll kick up, and I'll move it out to Saturday, and it'll come up when I can most productively interact with that. There's all kinds of YouTube videos on how to use things productively. And if I were to recommend one of the top 5 books that's had an impact on my life, it is Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. So long-winded answer to your question, Darren. It was multifaceted, but that's where I keep my book summaries and everything else. Now, it's not my only device that I use. We got Outlook and Outlook tasks in our contact management system, but my phone is always with me. And as a result, so is my second brain.
Now, Tony, you're always a wealth of wisdom. What else you got? I know you're going to list there because I know Tony.
What else do I got? I think you wanted to ask a little bit about leadership moments.
Yeah. I was going to ask about your defining moment. What was that defining moment?
Defining moment.
Say, this is the moment that I would point to, or one of the moments that made Tony who he is and how he engages with life.
Yeah, I love quotes, and I feel like they're pithy little tidbits of wisdom. And I always say, the sign of a higher mind is that which goes from, oh crap, to what's next as quickly as possible. And I think a leader keeps his cool under fire. A leader never shows panic. A leader is very stoic, never too high, never too low. And I remember being at a conference, and the conference didn't start till the afternoon. It was in Florida. I was sitting outside listening to a book, absorbing my daily dose of vitamin D, which we don't get very much in the winters in Minnesota. And I get a phone call from my 35-year-old partner, John Rudy, and he says, I have some bad news for you. And I said, is everybody okay? Has anybody been injured or killed? And he said, no. And I said, all right, well, what do you got? Lay it on me. And he says, well, after literally a 30-second period of silence where he was trying to cough up the words, he said, we committed a $200,000 order entry error, and it's doubtful that it will be covered by insurance. So I did some quick mental math. I own 50% of the business, 50% of the profits, and I own 50% of the errors. So I said, all right, it's going to cost me $100,000. I hope you're liquid for your portion. And he thought I was going to get really angry. Let's get to the bottom of this. Where did the system break down? And there's time for that at another time. But at that moment, I just needed to be cool under fire. And Darren, you know that this is a very profitable business. And if you are spending up to your income level and perhaps more, you're doing it wrong. You're a hypocrite, because that's not what you're telling clients to do. No matter what your income level is, you ought to live on 80% of that or less. And I've been doing that the last 10 years. So yeah, $100,000 is a lot of money. But to me, I chalked it up immediately as a cost of doing business. And mistakes aren't habitual in our practice. So it wasn't like I needed to root out the culprit and make him feel bad and make him, and shame him. So that was one instance. And that was more of a transactional error. and how we reacted to it. The other error that I would share with you that I thought some leadership qualities came out. I've done a little bit of speaking in front of other advisors. And about 5 years ago, I had an advisor come up to me after the meeting and he says, "You look like you got your stuff together. You got a great team, blah, blah, blah." And he basically told me about the team that he was on. And he described his situation as that of a battered spouse. He had a very bullying senior partner. And it was just a really poor work environment. And he said, "Can you help me fix my team?" And I said, "Of course, I'd do anything for you." And we spoke a bunch of different times, had a couple breakfasts, gave him some advice. Then he came back to me. He said, "It's not working. Can I just join your team?" And I had to think about that. And Darren, you were part of our mastermind group that helped me debrief this, so you know the story, but I'll finish for the audience. I went back to my partners and I said, "I think we ought to hire this guy." And they said, "No way." They said, "We got a great culture. Every time you add a different ingredient to the stew, it changes the flavor. We don't need to do that." And I said, "The reason we should do this is because we can. This guy seems to have a great attitude. He claims he's got great clients, and I think he could really thrive in our culture." To make a long story short, he came on board. He wasn't who he said he was. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. Over the course of 3 years, we took $55 million of his client assets, brought them over from his previous team, and grew that book to over $100 million using our team, our processes, our planning. And he wanted more ownership. He wanted more revenue. And it was all about me, me, me. And our culture is about we, and we. So we made the tough decision to terminate him. And fortunately, we had an agreement with him signed early on that said, if we go our separate ways, here's the division of assets. And it worked out that we would have kept about 30 or 35 million of that $100 million book if we had abided by the agreement. But he ignored the agreement, went after all the clients. So we decided to call everybody, invite them to stay. That book is now $100 million that stayed. He took 30 million after coming on board with 55. So we didn't mean to do him any harm. We just invited people to stay in the culture that they'd become accustomed to, and they did. So the leadership lesson there is give people a chance, but know when to cut bait and run, and have a margin of error underneath all the decisions that you make. Because the smart people, or I would say the dumb leaders, say, "How much money can I make if I'm right?" I think the smart leaders say, "How much can I lose if I'm wrong? And how do I limit that exposure?" And if we were faced with the decision to do that again, I would do it all over again, because basically it meant we collected $70 million in new AUM over 3 years. I'd do that again. I didn't like the people issues that came up, but those things come up and you just deal with them as they come up with integrity and ethics, knowing that you got to behave as if you were going to talk your story on a newscast someday or on a podcast.
Yeah. Well, that worked out pretty well for you, I'd say.
It did. It's that margin of error, and everything that we did, I would tell a priest in confessional, or I would tell a reporter on a news story. And Darren, I think that's the way you have to run your practice, where you can do things in secret, but if they ever come out, you better be ready to defend the ethics of your decisions.
Now, I was taught early on where I started that, anything you do, you should imagine being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. If you're comfortable with it, then go forward.
Yep.
And that's how I've always tried to operate. And
I agree. I heard that in my training class 35 years ago and have tried to live that every day.
I think it's probably an old brokerage thing.
I think it is. And those of us that pay attention, actually, it ends up working out okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, Tony, this has been a great conversation full of a lot of wisdom as always. I always get so much when I talk with you. So I really appreciate you being here and taking time to talk to us and share some of your hard-fought wisdom over 35 years of a career. So congrats on all your success.
Yes, thank you, Darren. Thanks for asking. It's my pleasure. If I can do anything for you or anybody listening, don't hesitate to look me up. I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Take
Take care.
Buddy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Your next step in leadership. Go to leadyourfirm.com for more practical lessons in leadership for RIAs. Find the book, Clarity, at leadyourfirm.com and Amazon. Subscribe now to catch future episodes of the Lead Your Firm podcast. This podcast is a production of Firmata Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, headquartered in Sonoma, California. Contents are for information purposes only. Nothing herein amounts to investment advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. Firmata Advisors does not provide tax or legal advice. Thank you for listening to the end. True leaders read the fine print. See you next episode.